I inherited my uncle's storage unit and found something that changed everything. When Uncle Vincent passed away last month, I expected maybe some old furniture and dusty photo albums. What I discovered instead was evidence of a decades-long deception that would destroy my family and reveal the shocking truth about my own identity. My name is Sophia, and this is the story of how a simple inheritance turned my entire world upside down. Vincent had always been the black sheep of our family. My father, Raymond, constantly complained about his irresponsible younger brother who never held down a steady job and lived paycheck to paycheck. When the lawyer called to inform me that Vincent had left me his only asset, a storage unit in downtown Portland, my parents seemed almost embarrassed by the gesture. "Just clean it out and donate whatever's there," my mother, Diane, said dismissively. "You know how Vincent lived, probably just junk." But something about inheriting that storage unit felt significant. Vincent and I had always shared a special bond. While my parents saw him as a failure, I saw him as the one adult in my family who actually listened to me. He was the one who encouraged my writing, who remembered my birthday when my own parents forgot, who showed up to my high school graduation when they were too busy with work. The storage facility was in a rough part of town, and Unit 247 looked no different from the dozens of others lining the corridor. When I rolled up the metal door, the musty smell of old cardboard and forgotten memories hit me immediately. At first glance, it looked exactly like what my parents had predicted. Boxes of random items, some old furniture covered in sheets, and filing cabinets that had seen better days. I started with the obvious stuff. There were boxes of books, mostly science fiction novels and philosophy texts that showed Vincent's intellectual side that my family never appreciated, some vintage vinyl records, an old guitar with broken strings, and several boxes of photographs spanning decades. But it was when I opened the third filing cabinet that everything changed. Inside were manila folders, each meticulously labeled with dates going back 30 years. The first folder I opened was labeled Raymond, 1995-2000, and contained what appeared to be financial documents, bank statements, loan applications, investment records, but these weren't Vincent's documents. They were my father's. My hands started shaking as I realized what I was looking at. Vincent had been keeping detailed financial records of my father's business dealings for decades, and from what I could see, my successful, respectable father had been involved in some very questionable activities. The next folder was even more shocking. It was labeled The Arrangement and contained correspondence between Vincent and my father dating back to 1994, the year I was born. The letters revealed a truth so devastating that I had to sit down on a dusty box to process it. Vincent wasn't just my uncle, he was my biological father. The letters detailed how Diane had an affair with Vincent, got pregnant, and how Raymond agreed to raise me as his own child in exchange for Vincent disappearing from our lives. But Vincent hadn't just disappeared. He had been blackmailed into silence. Raymond had discovered Vincent's involvement in some minor tax issues and threatened to turn him in unless he stayed away from me permanently. But the story got worse. Vincent had been sending child support payments to Raymond for 18 years, not out of legal obligation, but because Raymond had been extorting money from him, threatening to expose both the affair and the tax issues if Vincent didn't pay up. As I dug deeper into the files, I found evidence that my father had been using Vincent's payments to fund his own business ventures. The money that should have been for my care and education had been invested in Raymond's construction company, helping him build the successful business that our family was so proud of. There were also medical records. Vincent had been trying to get information about my health and well-being for years, but Raymond had blocked every attempt. When I was hospitalized at age 12 with appendicitis, Vincent had tried to visit, but Raymond had him banned from the hospital, telling security he was a dangerous relative with no legal rights. The most heartbreaking discovery was a box of birthday cards and Christmas presents, one for every year of my life, that Vincent had bought but never been allowed to give me. Each card contained a handwritten letter updating me on his life and expressing his love and pride in my accomplishments that he could only learn about through mutual acquaintances. I spent 3 hours in that storage unit reading through 24 years of my life from Vincent's perspective. The man I thought was my uncle had been watching from afar, documenting every achievement, every milestone, every moment he was forced to miss because of my father's threats. The final folder was labeled "For Sophia" and contained a letter dated just 2 months before Vincent's death. In it, he explained that he had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and didn't have long to live. He wrote about his regrets, his love for me, and his hope that someday I would understand why he had to stay away. "Sophia," the letter read, "I know this will come as a shock, but I am your biological father. I have loved you from the moment you were born, and staying away from you has been the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Your mother and Raymond gave me no choice, but I want you to know that not a day has passed that I haven't thought about you and wished things could be different." I drove straight to my parents' house, the box of evidence in my passenger seat. I walked into their living room where they were watching their evening news, and I dropped the files on their coffee table. "We need to talk," I said. The color drained from both their faces as they recognized the documents. Patricia started crying immediately, but David tried to bluff his way through it. "Elena, you don't understand the situation. Vincent was unstable. He was my father," I interrupted, "and you've been lying to me for 24 years. What followed was the most brutal conversation of my life. Diane confessed to everything, the affair, the pregnancy, the decision to let Raymond raise me, but she insisted they did it for my own good, that Vincent was too irresponsible to be a father. Raymond's defense was even worse. He claimed he had protected me from Vincent, that the blackmail and extortion were justified to keep our family together. He actually seemed proud of himself for building his business with Vincent's money, as if he had somehow earned it. "You stole my father from me," I told them. "For 24 years you let me believe that the man who loved me most in this world was just my eccentric uncle. You took his money, blocked his attempts to be in my life, and let him die thinking I might never know the truth." Diane kept apologizing, begging me to understand, but Raymond remained defiant. "We gave you a good life," he said. "A stable home, good schools, opportunities Vincent never could have provided." "With his money!" I screamed. "You built your precious stable life with money you extorted from my real father." That's when Raymond made his biggest mistake. He said, "Vincent was weak. If he really wanted to be in your life, he would have fought harder for you." I showed him the medical records, the legal consultation notes, the evidence that Vincent had tried repeatedly to establish his parental rights, but had been blocked at every turn by Raymond's threats and manipulation. I made a decision that night that would change everything. I gathered all the evidence of Raymond's extortion and financial manipulation and took it to a lawyer the next day. It turns out that what Raymond had been doing wasn't just morally wrong, it was illegal on multiple levels. The extortion, the fraudulent business practices funded by coerced payments, the interference with Vincent's parental rights, it all added up to a criminal case that the district attorney was very interested in pursuing. But my revenge wasn't just legal. I also decided to honor Vincent's memory in a way that would expose the truth publicly. I used my inheritance money, which included a life insurance policy Vincent had secretly maintained for me, to place a full-page ad in our local newspaper. The ad featured Vincent's photo and told the true story of his relationship with me, including excerpts from his letters and documentation of Raymond's extortion. I titled it, "In Memory of Vincent Torres, the Father I Never Got to Know." The response was immediate and overwhelming. People who had known Vincent came forward with their own stories of Raymond's manipulation and threats. Several business associates revealed that Raymond had been spreading lies about Vincent for years, destroying his reputation in their community. Raymond's construction business began losing contracts as word spread about the criminal investigation. Diane was ostracized by her social circle, many of whom had known and liked Vincent. The perfect family facade they had maintained for decades crumbled in a matter of weeks. But the most satisfying moment came when I received a call from Vincent's former girlfriend, Rebecca, who had been with him during his final months. She told me that Vincent had talked about me constantly, showing her photos and sharing stories about the daughter he loved but couldn't claim. "He was so proud of you," Rebecca said. "He knew you were smart and strong enough to handle the truth when the time came. He said you had his eyes and his stubborn streak." 6 months later, Raymond was sentenced to 2 years in prison for extortion and fraud. Diane and I are slowly working toward some kind of relationship, though I'm not sure we'll ever be truly close again. The betrayal runs too deep, and every time I look at her, I think about all the years Vincent spent alone, loving me from a distance. I've been visiting Vincent's grave regularly, bringing him updates on my life and telling him about the career in journalism I'm pursuing, inspired by his love of truth and justice. I found his guitar in the storage unit and had it repaired. I'm learning to play the songs he wrote, including one called Sophia's Song that he composed for my 5th birthday, but never got to play for me. The storage unit that seemed like such a burden has become my most precious inheritance. Not because of its monetary value, but because it gave me the truth about who I am and where I come from. It showed me that I was loved unconditionally by someone who sacrificed everything to protect me, even when it meant protecting me from himself. I've learned that family isn't always about blood, but it's not always about who raises you either. Sometimes it's about who loves you enough to do what they think is best for you, even when it breaks their heart. Vincent did that for 24 years, and Raymond used that love to manipulate and control everyone involved. The hardest part is knowing that Vincent died believing I might never know how much he loved me, but I choose to believe that somehow, wherever he is, he knows that his truth finally came to light. The storage unit wasn't just full of documents and evidence, it was full of love that had been stored away, waiting for the right moment to be discovered. I still have that key to Unit 247. The lease runs for another year, and I've decided to keep it as a space to remember Vincent, and to remind myself that truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply it's buried. If you've ever felt like there are secrets in your family that don't quite add up, trust your instincts. Sometimes the people we think we know best are the ones keeping the biggest secrets, and sometimes the people we barely know are the ones who love us most. The inheritance I thought would be worthless turned out to be priceless. It gave me my real father, even though I met him through letters and documents instead of conversations and hugs. It gave me the truth about my identity and the strength to demand justice for the man who loved me enough to let me go. Vincent may not have been able to raise me, but in the end, he still taught me the most important lesson of all, that love finds a way, even when it's locked away in a storage unit for 24 years. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything? Share your stories in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you handled learning difficult truths about the people you thought you knew. And if this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real stories that remind us that truth is always worth fighting for.